Hey everybody, JP here once again, and yeah, if you couldn't have guessed, we're going to talk about Black Album clean guitars, predominantly the Enter Sandman intro, and I believe it was the same sound used for Nothing Else Matters, just with some slightly different mixing going on for that one, which we'll talk about later on. Just have to say that playing this and trying to recreate it just gave me another whole new appreciation for James Hetfield's right hand picking and just how consistent, I mean like almost robotically consistent that guy's hand is, but also the feel he plays with, because there is a rhythmic sort of swing to this. It is the driving force of this intro. And, breaking it down, we're going to talk about everything, stuff we've gathered from interviews with James and Bob Rock. And I could see how they really did agonize over finding a very unique sound for this and not just, plug into an amp, mic it up, and let's go. Like, I think they really sought to make this something very unique. And we should start off with the guitar that was used for it, because it was not one of James' normal guitars. It was not one of his ESP Explorers. It was actually one of Kirk Hammett's guitars. It was Kirk's Tom Anderson Pro-Am that he used a lot on the Justice tour. In fact, on the Seattle '89 video, you can see Kirk playing it quite a bit. I think he uses it for his solo section in that video. And it originally had Tom Anderson pickups in it that were at some point swapped to EMGs. And there's shots of Kirk using it in the studio in a year and a half in the life of Metallica. And you can see that there were EMGs in it at the time. And actually, to take the pickup thing a step further, James had two custom ESP Explorers made for the Black Album tour with the same pickups as the Tom Anderson. It had single coils in the neck and middle and his 81 bridge humbucker in them. One we call Scary Guy. I believe it's an MX220 ESP Explorer, and it has the little Scary Guy logo up on the headstock. And then the other one we call NRA, because it has the NRA logo inlaid on the neck. And I believe that's an MX250 ESP. Both of these were used pretty exclusively for Nothing Else Matters on that tour from, late 91 through 93. And then we saw one of them pop up again in 94. In 94, NRA popped up with a pick guard on it and no middle pickup anymore. So I'm assuming the middle pickup wasn't being used and was just getting in the way. It probably had a 5-way selector switch, which I could see the way James hits his toggle switches on his guitars. I could see how the 5-way would kind of become a nuisance. So it looks like he experimented with getting rid of that middle position altogether and putting a pick guard on it. But by the Load tour, he was using his Ken Lawrence Explorer for Nothing Else Matters for like the next over a decade, probably the next 15 years. Maybe still does. I haven't seen him in a while, but that looks like 94 was the last we saw of either of these single coil Explorers. But just pretty cool that, he wanted to keep the sound as close as he could, at least for that tour. Finding this out was kind of a bit of a revelation for me, because when I first attempted to nail this sound, I was using, I think I had an 85 in the neck position of my V. And that was just way too dark. It made me think he didn't even use a neck pickup for it, because that pickup has such a powerful bass to it. Then I tried the EMG 60, which James has been using in his guitars forever. And that was definitely closer, but it was still a little too powerful on the bottom. The top was getting closer, but the bottom wasn't. And then when I heard about the Tom Anderson, I looked into their single coil options, and I found that EMG has the H single coil. It's a single coil in a humbucker housing. And it's one of the first pickups that EMG ever made, actually. It's the same exact pickup as their S single coil. So I grabbed one and played it through the Nombrini Jazz Chorus plugin, which is what we used for that sound here. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then I was like, there it is. That's the sound. Granted, I'm playing it in a mahogany-bodied guitar with a set neck and a 24 3/4-inch Gibson scale, and whereas the Tom Anderson would have been basswood body, bolt-on neck, and a 25.5-inch scale, also with Floyd Rose, which even if you're not using the Floyd, it's still affecting the resonance of the instrument. So those are some things that I definitely EQ'd to compensate for those differences. The Tom Anderson would naturally be a little brighter with a little more of an emphasis on the attack, so we kind of made up for that a little bit here. But if we just listen to it through, that's pretty close to James' live sounds from that era. And that was basically half of the sound for this. And the other half was something James mentioned in an interview, which I thought was super cool, that they went direct with an MXR Dynacomp compressor pedal. So we've got that going with the good old Phasertone Comp 76, which I've used quite a bit for other things. And if you saw my load notes video and the guitar sound from Bleeding Me that we tried to recreate based on those notes, the signal was split between the jazz chorus and an MXR Dynacomp. Granted, they went differently. It didn't go straight direct on that, but I thought that was really cool. So just so you can hear that. It almost sounds like an acoustic. There's still a chance that it was doubled with an acoustic, but when I tried this, I realized, wow, I think we could actually do this with just one guitar. So that's the same performance split between the JC120 and the Dynacomp. So I'm only playing it once, and it's going through two, you think of them as two parallel processes. So the guitar would have gone from the MXR into direct box. We're not sure exactly what direct box they use. Not nearly as many options back then as there are now. I mean, the Countryman Type 85 was the standard forever. A lot of studios had their own just made from transformers, just, impedance matching transformers, kind of like the old Motown ones. And Yuri had a couple of really cool DIs from the 80s that very possibly could have turned up. They had active and passive versions. And they have little high and low pass filters on them, which made them really handy. I'd like to get myself a couple of those for the studio, but I digress. Probably just a plain old Countryman 85. So yeah, why don't we have a look at the sound. And mute my reverbs and delay for now. And this is Nambrini Jazz Chorus with some pretty well-known Hetfield settings. Lots of treble, bright switch on, lots of treble, very little mid-range, and just enough bass before it gets to be a little too much. Especially for this sound. He might have used more bass live, and certainly wouldn't, with a humbucker in the neck position, he would have had more bass. But for this sound, didn't require much. Just a touch of reverb. Notice we're not using the chorus on the amp, and let me explain why. It's Nambrini did a killer job with this, and the chorus sounds great, but there's a couple aspects of the chorus that you have to go back to the original JC120s to understand. And that is, when you turn the chorus on, it was fixed. The speed and depth controls did not affect the chorus sound on those original amps. I know there are other versions of them where it did, but the JC120 combos, I believe the same ones that James uses, the chorus was fixed. The speed and depth only worked on the vibrato modes. Some of them added a trim pot in the back of the amp that was like a chorus adjust pot. That was more like an intensity control. We'll get to that in a little bit. The other thing was that the chorus only came out of one speaker. So if you were standing in front of one of these amps, the chorus was only coming out of the right speaker, the left speaker stayed dry. You were constantly getting a 50-50 mix of the chorus sound. And of course in the studio, you could mic up each speaker and then blend them at whatever ratio you'd like. So you can't do that with the plugin, which is unfortunate, because otherwise I think it sounds fantastic. And I am using a couple of Electro Voice IRs. These came with the plugin, and there's one with a 57, one with an M201 condenser, and I just like the way they sounded together. Not a huge difference between them, but they blended really nicely. So that's what I'm using there. But for the chorus, I'm using this Audiority Chorus Ensembler plugin. Now, this is based on the old Roland CE1 Chorus Ensemble pedal. And this pedal had the same chorus circuit as the JC120 amps. Again, the depth and rate controls only work in vibrato mode. The chorus only has an intensity control. This is the same control that was on the rear panel of those JC120 combos. And if you turn it up, almost a little flange effect to it when you turn it up. But I don't think Hetfield turned that up on his. It doesn't sound like it to me. But the reason I'm using this is because down here we've got a mix control that I can leave at 50%, and we've got a stereo spread control, which of course, if I mic both speakers of a combo, I would have the option. I could pan them left and right, or I could actually keep them mono and vary the blend in mono. Just to hear That's 100% spread. And that's mono. So I thought somewhere in between there sounded best, and I settled at about 60%. And mix. 100 seemed to be too much, and of course 0 was, what's the point? So I'm leaving it at 50. 50 sounded good to me. And it certainly did the trick here. Now, let's talk about EQs. Randy Staub and Bob Rock's favorite EQ for like Swiss Army knife purposes seems to be the GML 8200. And I've already tried a number of 8200 plugins. I've tried the Pulsar 8200 and Massenburg Design Works in the past. I wanted to do something different. I tried that AMEC 200, which I know is really popular. I just wasn't crazy with the way it sounded. I thought it sounded a little harsh, actually. And then I figured I needed a mastering EQ, so even though this is not based on the GML, this is the Kive M5133, which is based on the old Focusrite Blue mastering EQ. And I just thought the curves of it sounded great. And the only thing I'm doing on this track is a little bit of, didn't mean to click on that, but yeah, a little bit of high pass filtering around like 75 Hertz just to get rid of some of the rumble. I also wanted to have it open on this track because I'm using some oversampling on all of them, and the oversampling is not accounted for in the Pro Tools delay compensation. So the fact that I've got it on the parallel track, which we're gonna get to in a second, and I'm doing a lot more EQing with it on that track, but in order to keep the two of them time aligned with the 2 times oversampling, I wanted to have an instance of it on each side of the parallel guitar there. So let's get to that next track. This would be the DI, the Dynacomp DI. And it's so cool, it almost sounds like an acoustic. I'm getting a lot of level from this, so. But it really accentuates that attack and evens it out quite nicely. And that combined with the way I'm EQing it, just, that's with no EQ. And I mean, electric guitars DI'd kind of sound a little ugly and doinky to begin with, right? So I'm boosting like 3 dB of 2.2K. I'm boosting 2.8 dB shelf beginning at 3.3, so that's just pure high end. You can hear it. I love how each one of these has a little headphone option. So that's our shelf. That's our little peak at 2.2. I'm rolling off lows. I'm rolling off some bottom, almost 6 dB shelf, beginning at 350. And I'm rolling 5.6 at about 652. So that's getting rid of some of that honk in the mid-range at the 650 range. And just some lows. This is a really beautiful, gentle EQ. This is my first time using it, and I love it. Kive has, almost all their stuff has really impressed me. And yeah, no difference there. Now blending them together, this is a perfect example of how Bob Rock and Randy Staub like to use phase for EQ. I'm using the Little Labs, and without it, so you're losing a lot of info. They're slightly out of phase, the tracks. So I basically just turn the phase adjust until it sounded right. I think I was right about there. So I didn't have to use the delay adjust at all because both signals are coming in at the same time. There's no delay. Now, how they would have done this back in the day is a little different. Little Labs didn't exist yet. In fact, I don't even think the company existed yet, although Jonathan Little was a studio tech in LA back then. But anyhow, anytime you're combining, you're playing the same instrument through a DI and through a mic'd amp, the DI track is going to be a little early. Apologies if you guys already know this, but I'm sure not everyone does. So the DI track is always going to be ahead of the mic'd amp, just because of that extra inch or two between the speaker and the microphone of the amplifier. So, you know, now of course you could line them up in a DAW. Back then you couldn't. So what you would do, in most cases, you could just try flipping the phase, and sometimes you got lucky. Sometimes you hit the lottery and that's all it took. Or you could move the microphone on this. If it's only one mic on a speaker, this would be easier to do. You could just slowly move that microphone until it lined up better. Or you could run the DI through a delay, and you would want to use a high fidelity delay with 0 repeats, 100% wet. AMS DMX was used for this. You could probably use PCM42 for it. I think you could get down to that sort of level of minutia with that. Yeah, I remember the AMS, because you could really just had those big buttons on it to just go up like 1-2 milliseconds at a time until you heard things click. And like in this case, I'm inverting the phase and adding a little bit of adjustment to it to get it right. So yeah, I thought this was a really cool example of that. Like if I bypassed it and just flipped the phase, it's okay, but by sweeping this, I was really able to find where the frequencies, you know, which position accentuated the frequencies best here. See, a lot of bottom when you go down there. So yeah, I thought somewhere around there sounded best. Now, I've got both of these tracks going into a guitar bus, because based on what we know about Bob and Randy from all the notes we've put together, they commit to tape a lot. They blend mics to tape all the time, at least back then they were. And they weren't afraid to mix, you know, all the toms down to 2 tracks, all the kick mics down to individual tracks, and so on. So I would imagine this was no different. I would imagine they found the blend that they liked, just like we have here. And as you can see, I really am running these both at Unity, and I think they sound great that way. So that's what's going into our guitar bus. And I've got a little bit of compression from an LA2A just to tie things together, gentle compression. If you compare this to the original, here there's just a little bit of rhythmic movement in the original. And I felt like I wanted to get that from the compressor. And I tried a bunch. The LA2A got me there the best. Now I've got another instance of this M5133 EQ. So now I'm EQing both tracks together. This is really, both here and on the DI is where I'm doing a lot of EQing to compensate for the mahogany-bodied guitar versus the basswood. So I'm probably boosting a lot more top end than they did in the studio on this. But I'm boosting 3.3 of 6.3K and 2.13 dB of 4.2K. Rolling off below 80 hertz again, and minus 217 at 200 hertz. So a little dull without that. A little bit of Pultec EQ, but this is more for the sound of the Pultec, because I felt like there was just something missing. Again, not bad. And I'm doing just a little bit of 8K there on the top. And on the bottom, I'm doing like the simultaneous boost and attenuate at 100 hertz. And that's all. But it's more for the sound of the Pultec, that sort of very forward thing that the Pultec does so well. And then, so this is cool, and it made me laugh. I'm just doing a trial of it right now, but I love it. This is from Mixland. This is their 3348. It's basically a vintage digital converter emulator. So, you know, digital tape, The tape itself didn't really have a sound, it's just ones and zeros, right? But the converters getting in and out of it absolutely had a sound. And some would even say that the old Sony digital machines sounded terrible by today's standards, but they had a sound. And I think it's so cool that somebody actually did this. And they have other A to D options in here. I'm using the 3348 because I believe that the clean guitars on the Black Album were overdubbed directly to, it was actually Sony's 3324. They had a pair of 24-track machines. The 48s were out, but they weren't everywhere yet by 1990, 91. Pretty sure they used the same converters. They were 16-bit converters as the 24 and the 48. The 3348 HR, which is also modeled here, that had 24-bit converters. But we're gonna stick with the 3348 converters. And also there was this emphasis at 6.1K. And I looked at a couple of spectrum graphs of various sounds from the Black Album, and there is a ton of 6K information all across the board on them. So I think there was like pre-emphasis and de-emphasis on the Sony machines. And when I started playing around with this, I realized, you know, that was such a huge part. That's without it. Again, it just adds a little something to it. And I mean, on paper, it's probably lo-fi, but it works. And I think it sounds fantastic, even though this definitely made me laugh when I first heard about it. So now we can talk about, also on the mix bus, I've got another instance of it here on the mix bus, but I'm using, this is the PCM 1630 converters. Sorry, hearing that riff is gonna start driving me nuts. The Sony PCM 1630 was a mastering processor that was basically the industry standard from when it came out in about 1985 until the mid to late 90s when external converters started becoming more popular. So for about 10 years, every CD that you bought and you listened to went through a Sony PCM 1630 mastering processor because, you know, Sony had the patent on the compact disc along with Philips. That was a joint venture. And they developed, first it was the 1600, then the 1610, then the 1630. And the 1630 was really when they got the mastering for CD down. I would say the next 10 years of CD mastering were like the golden age of that format before you started getting into external converters and clipping and crushing and yada yada. We could thank Apogee Soft Limit and Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory for that. And I actually have a whole freaking essay that I did a video on mastering with and the Loudness Wars if you want to go check that out. But anyhow, I digress. I put this on the mix bus. It's not as drastic as the 3348 converters, but there's a little something going on there. I don't have the emphasis on, and I'm not really pushing it that hard, but I figured, what the heck? It has the option, and we know they used it because every CD that would have been made in this era went through that, right? So now we can talk about effects. And we can listen to a couple of these very specifically. These are what I call the Bob Rock array of processing. These are the effects that I associate with his albums the most. And this would be the RMX reverb, primarily known for snare drum reverb, but it added something nice to the guitars. AMS delay, absolutely with the chorus strip, huge part of Bob's sound. He has talked specifically about using this on the Black Album clean guitars for Enter Sandman and Nothing Else Matters. So this is straight from the horse's mouth. And then another favorite was the EMT 250 plate. And again, when I was comparing sounds with the original, it really took having all three of these going to get me someplace where I felt like we were capturing all the details of the original. So let me do this just so you can hear what each one's doing individually. So this is the 250. I've got what, 1.8, Not getting too crazy, little bit of bottom. And I'm not rolling off that much top. See? And just a touch of pre-delay. Well, the pre-delay, you're not gonna hear anything unless we mix it together there, but you get the idea. So this is one of those plugins, just like the original. It kind of just does one thing really well and probably better than anything else. So we've got that. Then we got the DMX. Now this is fun. So this is short delays, 27 milliseconds on one side, 35 on the other. Just enough regeneration to kind of thicken things up a little bit. I should be on wet solo there. There we go. And the chorus effect. Subtle chorus, as Bob Rock said, short delays and just kind of a touch of this. See, gets extreme pretty fast. And if you have a hardware unit, I mean, I don't know many people that do anymore, but if you have a hardware unit but you don't have the chorus strip, you can do this with the VCO, but it's not the same. The chorus strip really makes it, and Bob Rock emphasizes that as well. He was so happy when UAD made the plugin with the chorus strip, because they're so rare and they're always breaking. Now, if I turn the chorus off, now we've got manual pitch mode here, where you could adjust how much it changes from side to side. That sounds cool in its own right, but not for this sound. And you could flip the phase. And you can filter out the top, but I like the top end of this. I think that's what makes it sound unique from other delays. See, it is a little noisy. I wish they gave the option to turn that noise off. The EMT 250 has that option, and I just turn it off. But yeah, this one doesn't. It kind of annoys me. As soon as I bypass it, the noise goes away. And it ramps up. See? Yeah. So UAD, maybe you want to do something about that. Or maybe there's a way to do it that I'm not aware of, but I couldn't find anything in the manual, so anyway. Either way, cool effect. I mean, the originals could be noisy, so it's not that far off. And then this RMX reverb, it's like a slightly modulated sounding hall reverb. And when I was comparing again the original with our version, there was just something about it, like a springiness to this that just, that I was missing. And now I want to talk about one of my favorite little pieces of ear candy. For the longest time, if you listen to the intro, there's a little extra resonance when the low E's are hit. And it doesn't really happen on any other note. And I could never quite figure that out. Is it a reverb just reacting to the E? Did they automate it? Whatever. All those are possibilities, but I was able to get as close as I could by doing this. I heard a little bit of a minor third in there, so I'm playing E and G together. And I played this through my Morley powered lock wah with a little notch filter set for like a fixed wah, which James was a big fan of. They also actually did that for the intro of My Friend of Misery on Jason's bass. His bass is going through Morley wah in a fixed position for that, just a little side note. But I used our jazz chorus, same settings. I'm playing the neck pickup on my V, the EMGH. I am using the chorus on here for this. In fact, let me mute everything else. So that's just the guitar through the Morley, through the Numbrini. Next, we have Cornef Micro Digital Reverberator. Really cool little plug-in. I'm 100% wet, a little bit of pre-delay, 30 millisecond pre-delay, slow gate setting. A lot of the settings just have cool little frequencies and things poking out, and this one I thought sounded the coolest. And then we've got Eventide Instant Phaser. I know Bob Rock is a fan of these. You can see some old Eventide gear like this in the background of the mixing sessions on A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica. I tried the flanger first, didn't care for it. The phaser gave me what I was looking for. And then just a little bit of Pultec. Take off some bottom and accentuate a little bit of top. And then in the mix, I'm only sending it through the EMT 250. So that's all you're hearing in the context of things here. You can boost the send for more. So that's one of my favorite little pieces of ear candy going on here. That's a really cool part of the sound. Gets overlooked very easily. And then there's also talk of there being an acoustic guitar doubling the intro there. And I played around with that. Apologies, that is a little noisy. I just recorded this very quickly in a very uncontrolled environment. So it adds a little something. And if we compare that with the original, I could totally see how that might be there on the original. But also it's played so impeccably tight by James that, yeah, I don't think it's humanly possible for me to play it that tight. I'd probably have to go into some editing trickery to really make that work. So yeah, it's very possible there could be an acoustic double in there, but I thought we came really close enough with just the electric guitar. That DI electric guitar really makes a huge difference in sounding like an acoustic. I mentioned before the mixing was a little different on Nothing Else Matters. I think there was definitely an acoustic double on that, and I think it was a bit louder in the mix. And considering I struggled to get the intro to this as tight as possible, I wasn't even going to try Nothing Else Matters fingerstyle. I'm too wimpy for that these days. Of course, Nothing Else Matters had all sorts of guitar embellishments throughout it, from 12-string electric and acoustic parts to Rickenbacker to the infamous Gretsch doing the dive bomb on the Bigsby and all that. So yeah, no shortage of guitars on that one. And then later on in the bridge, we have, it's doubled with a 12-string. Now this is pretty cool. For that, James used a Fender Shenandoah 12-string, which is a pretty unique sounding instrument. It's not very resonant in the low end. It's got a very tight low end and a very bright sort of cutting upper mid-range and top. A little honky sounding, actually. Probably be the best way to put it. I believe it was designed for bluegrass music, where there might be 5 or 6 acoustic instruments being played at the same time, and you don't want it to be too boomy because that would just turn into noise, really, with all those acoustics going at the same time. So a 12-string sort of with an emphasis on the top makes a lot of sense there. Now, my 12-string acoustic is the opposite. Mine's a Guild Jumbo, so it's like a cannon, you know? So I did attempt this with that. And I even EQ'd it to kind of push the mids more. So, I don't know. I think their mix was a bit different. Yeah. Mine's just way too resonant. And the way I'm set up here, mine's going through all the processing too, and his might not be. His might be a little drier there. But anyway, you get the idea. All of these parts are played just so precisely doubled with the original sound that it's no surprise. Everybody knows that Hetfield's an incredibly precise rhythm guitarist, but trying to recreate some of this stuff and play it consistently, it was fun, but it was a lot of work. So anyway, yeah, I hope I shed some light on this sound for a lot of people, because I think it's an incredibly unique sound. And I don't think I mentioned before on the mix bus, I'm running it through, the Waves bus comp, SSL bus comp, but it's not doing anything. The needle's not even flickering. And then I've got my latest favorite bus EQ, the Electrodyne 511 from Mixwave, with just 1.5 of a 10K shelf and 1.5 of a 100 hertz shelf on the bottom. And even on just a single guitar sound, it's quite nice. I really do love that plugin. So yeah, I've got to say, kudos to Mixland for the 3348 tape and Kive for the M5133 EQ. I don't think I could have accomplished this without either of these. Really fantastic. And then, of course, that Phaser Tone Comp 76 on the direct guitar was something I'd never tried before and really love. Bob Rock had mentioned using this method of taking a direct sound along with like a Roland jazz chorus amp. I think he said he used that with the Cult as well, on the album he did with the Cult. I think he said he's done it on some others as well. So yeah, clearly something that he and Randy Staub, big fans of. The Dynacomp just keeps popping up. There's always the rumor about Randy using it on the kick drum. There's the load notes, like I mentioned, of it being used for one of the clean guitars on there. So yeah, keep a Dynacomp handy. That's the best advice I can give you. In fact, my old one needs to be either repaired or replaced at this point, but yeah, phenomenal studio tool. So yeah, man, I hope you guys dig this. This was a lot of fun to do, and I'm quite proud of the result. So hope you enjoyed, all right? Please like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Thanks again.